All right. Hey, everyone. This is Josh. I'm the MCAT tutor, as you guys might know. And right here, I have Rachel. She's actually one of my two T's, and she'll tell you more about her MCAT journey. So, what was it like, Rachel? What did you start off with when you took the MCAT?
So my diagnostic score was a 491. And my first full-length practice test was a 505.
Okay. What did you end up getting on the real exam once you ended up taking it?
A
Five seven.
517.
So she ended up tying my score, which is really insane. And her breakdown, which I have right here in front of me, you ended up getting like a 129 in Chem Phys, a 129 in cars. So that's 91st percentile, 95th percentile for cars. And then a 130 in biochem, which is 95th percentile, and then a 129 in psych soc, which is 84th, to get overall the same score I did, 517, which is a 94th. That's really insane. What would you say, like, some of the biggest things you did to help you jump were?
I felt like the AMC Q bank helped a lot. And honestly, what I found helped a lot was so with Josh, I would go over my practice tests and even the ones that I got right, like I would go over those with him just to make sure that I got them right for the right reasons. So, each question we would just run through how to do it, how I did it, if there was a better way to do it. That really helped me a lot, I feel like, 'cause I jumped like, how many points? I jumped from a 506 to a 512 in like 3 or 4 weeks just from going over my AMC stuff.
Yeah, it's quite insane. I think when you started with me, you were at, like, a 506, 507, right? And then, yeah,
Yeah.
you went up to, like, a 517, and you had, like, a pretty strong motivation to jump up to that type of score, given that you wanna apply to more competitive schools, especially, like, Michigan, it's super competitive. So, yeah, that's exactly how it is. And you did pretty well in cars. And a big reason why I wanted to have you talk was because I couldn't really speak too much on my experience in doing well in cars. I mean, I got a 126, which is like I believe 72nd percentile. I'll post it up here somewhere, but I didn't do that great in cars. Whereas you did way better. So I don't know if you had any specific tips. I know you told me before that honestly, it kind of comes down to your own reading ability. Feel free to be honest about if there's a method behind the way you did cars, or if it was just if it was more something natural that came to you. What was it like? Yeah, because a
Yeah,
lot of people
so
watching my channel, they're super
So for
curious.
me
Yeah.
with cars, I felt like it helped me a lot to highlight as I go. So I know a lot of people recommend like, reading the paragraph and then highlighting after. That's how I was taught to do it in my MCAT class, but for me personally, it just helped me a lot to highlight as I went through. Not even so much for important information, but almost more to keep me on track with what I was reading cuz sometimes my mind wanders and I get distracted. So for me, I feel like when I'm reading a paragraph as I highlight I am, like, refocusing myself on, like, what am I reading? What am I highlighting? So I felt like that helped a lot, and also, the AMC Q Bank really helped me a lot. Like, I did all of the cars in that, I went over it all. I thought to myself, like, "Why did I get it wrong? What could I do next time?" Um and I really just made a point of when I was reading something is like pretend that it is the most important thing in the world that I'm reading and I'm so interested in it. Like I don't care if it's a philosophy passage or if it's about like ancient Greece. Like I this thing is the most interesting thing I have ever read in my entire life and I love it. And I'm just reading it like that with that mindset. And then a lot of times with the questions like if I knew that if I knew that I could quickly find something in the passage, like with the question that I was unsure of, like I would try and bot back to the passage and just see if I could find it, but that can be really time consuming. So I tried to just get all of the information like as I read it the first time through. So that was my car strategy, but definitely practice, practice, practice.
You did super well on that section, and a lot of people are probably frustrated with cars and wanting to understand, hey, how is that can improve? Why am I
Yeah.
stagnating so
Or
badly?
Or, like, a really helpful thing that I did was I completely got rid of the time limit for a while with the AMCQ bank, whereas, like, I didn't care how long it took me. I read through the passage so in depth and in detail to where, like, I knew everything about the passage when I was answering the questions because it helped me understand, like, where the questions are coming from, and so, like, for a while, I did that just with no time limit just to learn how to answer the questions. Because like, I feel like the biggest thing with cars is, like, how to answer the questions, like, what are they asking you? How like, what answer do they wanna hear? Like, there's more than one answer that you could generally say, "Oh, this is kind of right," but what do they wanna hear? So, for me, going through with no time limit and I would have on the AMC, I would have it flipped on where it would immediately show me if my answer was right or wrong, and I would immediately go back to the passage and say like, "Hmm, I got this wrong. Why did I get it wrong?" And as I was doing it for a while. I mean, obviously, like, practicing with time is important as you get more into closer to test day, but it really helped me a lot to develop those skills.
Mhm. No, that makes sense. So you were more like, oh, hey, let's just see where I went wrong first without any time constraints. And then you slowly started introducing it as you went, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it really helped me to learn what they were asking without because I feel like the time constraint puts, like, your mind into panic rush mode, and then you're not necessarily learning how to answer the questions, you're just learning how to answer them fast. So, for me, it helped me to learn how to answer the questions first and then introduce the time constraint. But you can't do that for too long because obviously you need to know how to do it within the time, but it helped me at the beginning to learn how to answer them
So you're
properly.
saying a good tip would be to get good at the questions themselves and then worry about time later on. That's quite
Yeah.
interesting because, to be honest, when I did cars, I only focused on, well, I did all my passages in 10 minutes or less. So I had that time constraint there. And then I told myself, okay, let's do 10 minutes and then build up my accuracy within that time limit. But I think honestly, that approach, if it worked well for you, and I'm sure it'll work well for a ton of other people, it's
It
probably a
it
better
worked well
approach.
for me, but it is important, don't get me wrong, it is very important to learn how to get the accuracy under the time constraint, but for me, I just felt like a big deal with cars was just knowing what they're asking you, just because they ask things sometimes in a very convoluted way that's like, there's more than one right answer. Like, yeah, I could justify 3 of these answers as right if, I have the right audience. So, a lot of it is just learning, like, why is this answer the right one? So for me, like when I actually had all the time in the world to really analyze the questions, and once you figure out how they ask questions, a lot of the questions after that are very similar. Like, you know, it's not that the passages are similar, but the way that they're asking questions, like what they're trying to get at.
That is really, really awesome to hear because the biggest philosophy, at least when it came to me making an absurd jump too from a 503 to 517, was that you have to focus on what the question is actually trying to ask. Because if you don't know what it's asking, there's really no point as to doing the MCAT or even reading the passage because it's not trying to test you on the comprehension of the passage, not so much as, oh, can you answer what we want from you? And that was something, once I realized that, I started improving massively on the exam. So, no,
Yeah,
it's
it's all
really
about getting in the head of the test writers, to be honest. Uh, I guess for me, I felt like it was like, what do they want to hear? Like, I know what I would think when I read this question, but what do they think?
that is so true. Yeah. And how did you understand what is it that they wanted to think? Like, what got you there? At least in terms of cars.
I guess I just got enough wrong that I started to see, oh, okay, so there's a pattern here. They don't like this style of answer with regards to this question. Like they're looking for this. So a lot of times I would analyze my wrong answers. So especially when I was doing my untimed practice, I would look at each answer and think to myself, like, why is this wrong? And I would use their description. And I would just really like try and understand why they did not like that answer. And the more that I did that, the more I understood what they were looking for in an answer.
That makes sense. Did you experience like any times where you felt like you plateaued or anything while studying for the exam and Yeah,
Yes.
or was it just
Oh, big time.
finishing the entire way?
No, I got, like, 5 tests in a row where I got a 506 or a 5 yeah, like a 506. Like, I was between a 506 and a 507 for, like, 5 exams in a row. Um, and honestly, like, I did Blueprint for my test prep initially, and their exams, were pretty hard for me, and I definitely hit a plateau around, like, 506, 507, where it would just go up and down and up and down, and my section scores would fluctuate a lot. So, like, maybe I'd get a 127 in chem physics this time, but, 125 in biochem, and then it flip-flopped, and it never seemed to be the time where I got a 127 in all of them.
Mhm.
And then when I got to the AAMC, I started at a 506, and then I got a 507, and then I got a 508, and then I got a 511, then 512, and then I went down to 511 again before my MCAT, and I jumped 5 points for my real MCAT.
Yeah, because I remember when we were going over some of your tests, the one section that seemed to fluctuate the most, it was Chem Phys. Cars fluctuate a little, but not much, but Chem Phys, like, yeah, it would fluctuate quite a bit. I don't know if you found that to be your most difficult.
Yeah, I found Chem Phys to be very difficult, especially because for me, when I am not as focused, I make a lot of silly mistakes, which I think helped me on the actual exam because I was so focused that the silly mistakes that I was making that were dragging down my score, like I wasn't making them because I was just so focused on what I was doing. But I mean, you remember my test. There were a couple things that I just got wrong because in the moment I blanked and then, going over it. I think it helped going over each of my practice tests, though. I think as many practice tests as you can really helps. And having somebody else to talk it over with, like, definitely helps. I mean, I know even just like me explaining to you what I got wrong and then having it click as I was explaining it helped me a lot.
Yeah, no, I remember when we had our sessions, sometimes I would roast you in a friendly way for getting some questions wrong. I'll be like, wow, how did you miss this with like whatever amino acid it was, you know? And then you would always tell me, oh yeah, I know it was such a dumb mistake and it's pretty stupid I did that. But honestly, I think there's huge value in seeing that you made a dumb mistake because that shows it's very easily fixable. Like I remember pretty much all of our sessions, you would pretty much say that like a good 75% of the mistakes you made, they were considered dumb mistakes that you could have easily fixed. And honestly, when I was like studying for the MCAT back in my studying days, I remember I also did make quite a bit of dumb mistakes. Even on my last practice test for the AMC, I scored around like a 520 on AMC 4 and a 516 on AMC 3, and I was still making dumb mistakes, even though I got those scores on the last AMC. So it shows that
Yeah,
even
well,
though
I got a 511 4 days before my real MCAT. So, but I don't know, I think I also just think the MCAT is a big mental game. Like, you have to, like, I don't know, you have to, like, manifest it, you know? I mean, you were telling me you said to me, like, "You're gonna get a 517," and, it's just you have to go in with confidence. Like, if don't second guess yourself. Every time that I changed my answer, I switched it from right to wrong because you picked the first one initially for a reason. So on the real test, I didn't change any answers. I just boom, 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 boom. Worked out.
yeah, that was a huge thing too, right? Like you second guess quite a bit on your practice tests, but then on the real thing, I remember we had like a call before like your test, and I was like kind of reassuring you, hey, you got this, you can do it. Because there were a couple times where honestly, I think you self-doubted yourself. Like I think you were more capable than you thought you were. And you
Yeah.
told me that you were in that mindset because you wanted to make sure that you talked yourself down to not disappoint yourself. And I totally understand that. A lot of pre-meds and people who take the MCAT, they tend to not expect too much from themselves because again they don't want
Yeah.
to be disappointed if they don't meet those expectations.
Under promise, over deliver. No, I'm just kidding. No, you should not do that with the MCAT. You should be honestly, like, you have to go in with serious confidence. Like, you are gonna crush this test. It's gonna be great, and you will.
Yeah, did you I remember my 517 test day distinctly that after I took the test I wouldn't say that I felt like I completely aced each section, but I remember I walked out of it and I was like, oh yeah, I gave it my best shot, like after every single section of the test. I don't
Oh,
know if you
I
felt
felt
the same
terrible.
way. You
No,
did?
I
Yeah.
left and I cried. I went home and I cried. I called you freaking out. I thought I had bombed it. And that's a good I almost voided my test, okay?
Wow.
I
I
at
didn't
the end
know
of my
that.
test, I thought about voiding it because I thought that I had bombed it so bad. But the thing is that the MCAT works out, right? The one thing that I've learned is that every single test that I felt the worst about, I did better and better the worse I felt, because the harder the test, the better the scale is for you. So, as long as you can know how to reason through the difficult problems, it'll give you a leg up. So for me, I always felt like I was better with the reasoning problems than like the memorization problems, which was frustrating to me at first because I kept getting easy ones wrong because I just didn't have it in my head. But I could reason through a difficult problem. I think that that helped me a lot on the real MCAT. I think that the MCAT is moving a lot towards um like reasoning problems. So really important to just know how to apply your information. Like have everything memorized that you can have memorized. I mean, it's definitely with the chem physics, have all those equations memorized, but know how to reason through the difficult problems and it'll take you very far.
Yeah, I agree. I think reasoning was something that started to become more of your strength, the more we were, like, going up to your test day, and it's
Yeah,
really important.
but definitely don't void your test because I left that test. I went out with my parents and I remember telling them I don't know, like I don't think that I did like horrible, but I don't think that I did well. And my dad for the entire month was so worried. Have you gotten your score back yet? Have you gotten your score back yet? Have you gotten your score back yet? And I finally opened it and I was so shocked and excited. Um but yeah, so if you feel terrible after your test, it's okay. You might have gotten a 517.
Yeah, imagine if you voided that, that would have been a huge mistake.
Well, I feel like I made you worried because I called you and I was like, I counted at least 8 that I got wrong. Like, I know that I did bad on this section and whatever, whatever, whatever. I did feel good about the biochem. The one section that I felt really good about was the biochem, and that turned out to be a 130. But
It's
the
like
rest of
sense
them,
too? No? Or yeah.
the rest of them felt like a roll of the dice.
Even psych Soch, 'cause I thought you told me it went well, but I don't know.
Psych Soch was like I was like medium on that. Like I thought that it went well, but at the same time there were a couple that I was kind of iffy on because it's a lot of reasoning and you just have to trust your gut. But for me, I have trouble trusting my gut sometimes.
Yeah, you just have to trust in all the prep that you've done up until that moment, and that's just, yeah, it's your time to shine once you take the test, and yeah. Because I remember when I took my 503 the first time, I was completely, like, sweating bullets, freaking out, and I think that I let that get the best of me, and that kind of explained why I got the score I got that day.
Yeah.
You know, 517, I walked in more confidently. Now, you told me that you felt like you didn't do too good and you cried, but nonetheless, I think in the moment you were probably, like, completely focused on the test.
Oh, I was so focused.
Yeah.
But I think I was, like, almost so focused that I was hyper focusing on the ones that I knew that I got wrong. So I was like there were a couple problems that I knew I had gotten wrong that I was just so focused on. But it turned out okay, and, like, honestly, I didn't do any studying the day before my MCAT. I don't know, for me, like, I spaced out my studying over a long time too, which I think really helped me. Like, I know some people kinda cram it all within a couple months, but for me, it really helped me to space it out, and that way, like, I still had time to do things. I felt like time management was really important to me. Like, I did not want the MCAT to be my entire life. Like, I still had in 3 weeks before my MCAT, I was my birthday, and I had all my friends over, and I actually did a little, like, long weekend trip to go to Florida to celebrate it. And I felt like it was really important to kind of take that break because when I went away and then I came back, my score jumped. It was just one of those things. Like I went away at a 508 and I had a week of just relaxation or 4 or 5 days, whatever it was. And I came back, took a test without even studying before, and jumped up to a 511 from a 508.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a vacation to rejuvenate yourself and to see things from a different mindset, because I
Yeah,
remember
you
I
have
took,
to
like,
take care of that mind of
a
yours, right?
yeah, I took, like, a camping trip in between, like, my 503 and the 517, and I just, like, I don't know if that caused me to
Yeah,
jump, but
I feel like a reset was actually it was really good for me. Like, I was very panicked while I was away, And, like, I still did some studying while I was gone, but nothing crazy. But I feel like it just really helped to, like, rejuvenate my mind and, like, make me feel ready to study again. So in those 3 weeks, I was ready to go, like, headfirst into the MCAT.
That's awesome. Well, do you have any last tips, Rachel? Because I think the Zoom meeting's about to time out, so I gotta get that recording down. But anybody who's
Last
struggling, what do
tips.
you have to tell them? Yeah.
What I have to tell you is trust your gut, and don't panic because you may very well jump 7 points on your real test day just purely out of being more focused. So, make sure to get those reasoning skills down. Those are important.
Yeah,
And have Josh go over your practice tests. It'll help.
yeah. That's literally all we did. Like every time, like we met together, we just went over her practice tests, and that ended up being very hugely beneficial to her because we were
And then
able
we
to.
go off on tangents too on if you got one thing wrong, like, it would lead you to another topic. It honestly helps you go over a wide range of topics. I found it really helpful, so definitely a good study strategy.
Yeah. No, definitely recommend have somebody else, a study buddy, if anybody or a friend go over your practice tests with you and explain the reasoning. It really helps in that regard.
Yeah, and I read through them, like, so many times. Like, before I took every practice test, I would read through every single one of my old practice tests just to refresh my mind.
Yeah. That seems to be very helpful. But of course, the big tip, get good at reasoning and read the question stem carefully. I cannot overemphasize how important that
Oh,
is.
question stem. Yeah, know what they're asking you. Because there can be answers that are right answers, but it's not answering what they want you to answer.
That is so
Like
true.
with cars, there are things that are like true about the passage. They love to do that. Like, yes, this is true about the passage, but what do they want to know?
Yeah. No, it's definitely a good tip to close out on for sure. But man, no, thanks so
Yes,
much,
and good
Rachel, for
luck. You
having.
guys got this. I believe in you.
No, thanks, Rachel, so much for having this like interview with me. It's really helpful to be able to talk to one of my students who I tutored, and then have you tell them upfront what it's like. Because there's so much I could say, having done it myself, but now that I've been able to help someone else do the exact same thing, there's a
Yeah,
lot of
he's a good tutor, guys. He gets the job done. A plus.
awesome. Well, in that case, I'll see you guys in the next video. But yeah, um, say bye, Rachel. And if you're down, I could drop, I don't know, some of your contact info if they want to reach out to you or anything like that, if you're fine with that. I don't know. But
Sure, yeah. That's no problem. I can give you like my
I'll link
email.
in the description below. Yeah. And yeah, in the meantime, I'll see you guys later and happy studying.
Happy studying.
Bye.